to
Lyndon
Pottinger,
Pottinger.
who was a chartered accountant, and she herself had taken some courses in accountant and in accounts or accounting, yes. And also she's a secretary. And back in the days, in the 50s and 60s, when you're a secretary in a boss, the first part of secretary is secret, So, so you have all of the business. And you basically run the business,
Listen, I'm not getting into the people everything. But seriously, she came into the thing at a young age. A devout Christian, mind you.
Yes.
And in fact, Lyndon, apart from being an accountant, he segued into the music business in that early 1960s.
1961, he set up the first black-owned recording studio. And they had a couple of labels. One of them was called SEP, which was her. In her initials.
Right, and he had Melolax and Gaydis, Golden Arrow, couple of that's the name of it.
And she, when she took over, everything, she just did gay feet.
She basically she stamped her own authority.
Yeah, man, she did.
But the Lyndon's business was productive. He had a couple of good artists under his belt. Unfortunately, by 1964, the marriage broke up, and she decided
but prior to the marriage breaking up, he had sold the business to Duke Reid.
To Duke Reid, right?
And to add to his repertoire of what he had already. And we're not going to mention now what happened afterwards, but it just goes to show how shrewd a businesswoman this woman is.
She took the thing to a completely different level. In fact, 1964, when she started out, one of her first pieces, you could say she hit the ground running, eh? Our first big hit under her hand was the
ballad,
that nice little love ballad,
Every Night with Joe White and Chuck.
And Chuck.
And the song came out in around 1965, 1966. So here goes, Every Night.
Yes. It interesting. This song spent quite a bit of time on the Jamaican charts. If you remember that.
Unlike today, where every day you have 100 tunes coming out, so nothing gets a time to cement. And that's the difference between then and now, Richie, where a song had a time to really play and embed itself in your psyche, where you could remember those songs. Today, the songs are so fleeting. Today you have a hit and tomorrow nobody remembers it.
That is true. But again, that's part of the wealth that, part of what comes from the wealth of both the talent and the availability of technology. In those days,
even though nowadays it's more the availability of technology than
absolutely. Talent. Well, the talent is there.
With the exception of a few.
We may mark a little hard, but when you consider that, the music and its origin out of Jamaica. But to the point, though, is that it did spend some time in the chart. Sonia came along at that time when the music was transitioning from the ska beat, the ska and the blues beat, and was
into rock
slowing down into rocksteady. And she basically distinguished herself at this point. I think some of our labels, you talked about Gay Feet. There was another one, High Note. High Note was a big label. In fact, a lot of our work went out on that. But she hit the scene again with the Ethiopians tune, The Whip, among others. The Silver Tones had another tune that came from her stables, Gun Fever, and of course Ken Booth, who was finding his way. Ken Booth was working between both her at her label, partially a little time. He spent a little time with Prince Buster, with our man, Scratchberry,
Right.
And
Right.
at the same time Studio One. But he did
Well, let's give the listeners a little taste to the whip
the whip.
and the Ethiopians. So that was
This
the Ethiopians with the
that was a
whip
big
song
tune
came
too.
out in
That was a big tune.
1968.
In '68,
You know which song was a big song to Richie? ABC Rocksteady with the Gay
ABC
Lads.
Rocksteady. Yeah.
Now, you know what I love about that song is the ability of the Gay Lads to have taken simple nursery rhymes and making a big hit out of it.
If I remember, this tune had another. No, well, it was called Nursery Rhymes at one time, because I remember seeing that's what I remember seeing on a label, Nursery Rhymes,
Record label.
but on the record label. The other thing too is this was the period when the music, we're trying to kind of take ownership of the music at the time.
And
so
also recognizing the British heritage, because that's where all of these nursery rhymes came from. And we did that too with quite a few of them, like Three Blind Mice, you know, and songs like those.
If you go deeper into the period, what you are going to be getting is a lot of this music. It was kind of Jamaican artists trying to find their footing, and so what they're doing is try to blend that in. You tie something that most people can identify with. You throw in a rhythm, and you put it to music. But eventually, that by mastering that, we mastered the art of making our own music.
It faded out into writing our own lyrics and
absolutely
and doing what we do.
Because you're now taking control, more and more control of the creative process. Gay Lads had another big tune, Lady with the Starlight. Not Lady with the Starlight. Hard to Confess.
Yes.
Big
you
tune.
know, one of the points I also want to make, Richard, is today producers seem to just be in the studio producing music. What I like about the era, the 60s and 70s, and even into the 80s, was artist development and the ability of these producers to not just see talent, but to also develop talent, you know? And that is one of the things that, and if you're just joining us, we're talking about Sonia Eloise Pottinger, Commander of the Order of Distinction. She passed away in 2010 after a battle with Alzheimer's disease. And she was Jamaica. She has a distinction of being Jamaica's first female producer. And to this day,
one of the most successful.
To this day, there's nobody to equal or eclipse her in terms of what she has done. So salute. I had the honor, Richie, of meeting this lady back in about 2001, 2002. She had her offices / studio down on 13th Street off of 441 in Lauderhill. And she told me that her biggest success to date was The Tide is High, when Blondie did an Atomic Kitten, did a cover version of that song.
For most of these producers and most of the artists, you know, the sampling, once one of those big, and usually it's a British, once they take the song, the game over.
It's gone. Because again, the songs were also cemented in the minds of Britain, because these songs were hits in the 70s, 60s, and 70s.
Also remember
the buying public are now adults, you know.
The other thing to remember too, again, which speaks to her own business acumen, is her tendency for licensing, for making sure that she have overseas distribution, because that's one of the things. She
was one of the first persons to do that. Yes,
absolutely. But let's give the listeners Hard to Confess, which another big Gay Lads tune.
Let me see if I can find that.
Okay, but man, like you have 30,000-40,000
too much
on one hard drive and another 70,000 on the next one. One of the things with the sound Garth, if you notice, there's with Sonia Pottinger.
It's more, and it is more reggae than it is rocksteady.
Well, one of the things, the contributor to that was the factor of the band. she had at the time Lynn Tate and the Jets.
Yes.
And Lynn Tate, if you remember, Lynn Tate came to us from Trinidad. He came up in the, I think it was 1962, with when they were doing this independence thing. The whole Caribbean, a lot of Caribbean musicians came up from the Southern Caribbean.
Yeah, we
And
got a lot of them. People like
Lord Creator came up
Lord
as well.
Creator, yes. The guy from Barbados,
Neil,
Opel, Jackie Opel.
Jackie Opel. But what's his name decided that he wasn't going back, right? Lynn Tate. In fact, the name was Nearlin Tate, and he formed that band, which was Duke Reed's studio band, and ultimately migrated over to things. So that sound you're getting, that have that very smooth Steel's Panic kind of sound. As you said, the thing with reggae music, with Jamaican music, the beat was very linear. And what he did with it is his own experimentation.
He created the own Trinidadian sing-song. Because as much as we have a kind of sing-song way of talking, especially if you're from Kingston, if you listen to the Trinidadian accent, it is more sing-song than the Jamaican accent. But Lynn Tate himself said that when he came to Jamaica, everything was fast, 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 fast. In Trinidad, he had slow calypso, he had fast calypso. So he decided that he was going to play around with the beat and see what he got, and out of that came Rocksteady. So he's also credited with being one of the people who
major
contributors
to the development of Rocksteady. So if you didn't know,
now you know. Another song that she did with an upcoming toaster at the time called Handicap was a song called Dr. No Good, which kind of have echoes of the Three Blind Mice that I was talking about. So here is Dr. No Good, again produced by Sonia Pottinger. And also, if you're just joining us, just want to welcome all the listeners on Facebook Live.
The Dr. No Good was actually
Dr. No Go.
No Go. It was actually done by a group called the Hippie Boys, which
was Handicap and the Hippie Boys.
Right, and what the Hippie Boys used to be Scratch Perry's, a part of Scratch Perry's studio band. By the time he got into opening up the Black Ark studio, this became a big part of the sound that he had. But let's give the listeners a listen.
Right, but again, before we go into the song, Rich, I was welcoming the listeners. Those who are listening on Facebook Live, those who are listening on yardmedia.com, and also if you're listening on Old School Rules Radio, mixlr.com. Thank you so much for sticking with us and supporting us every week. So here's Dr. No-Go, Handicap, and the Hippie Boys.
Boss. All right, while you organize yourself, I want to bring this to the attention of the listeners. This print, which is called Roots, Natty Roots. We're giving away 3 signed copies of this print today on Sunday Scoops, and we will give you a quick outline as to how you can score a copy of this print for yourself. Okay? And also, it's the opportunity to encourage people to go to the website, yardmedia.com, and take a look at our merchandise. We want to keep the stream going and alive. And let's try to encourage, I'm saying encouragement, sweet labor. And we really need some encouragement at this point in time. Over to you, Mr.
And also, if you're watching on Facebook Live, please share the feed, Don't keep it to yourself. Don't be selfish.
Absolutely.
Share the feed. All right. So if you're just joining us, we're talking about Sonia Pottinger. She is the producer, Jamaica's first female and most successful producer. She also, Richie, went on to do a couple of songs with, one of them, Alton Ellis, Can't Stand It, and then she did a couple of songs with the Melodians, featuring lead singer Brent Dow.
And the Melodians.
So I want to bring in, Alton Ellis and Lloyd Williams with Can't Stand It, and then I'm going to hit 2 songs from the Melodians, so we're just playing those songs straight.
Just so the listeners know, God, just a reminder, we're featuring the music, the work of Sonia Pottinger, who created one of the most significant music catalogs coming out of Jamaica. And
Definitely.
A lot of people we enjoy these songs, but we don't know the stories behind them. We have absolutely no idea as to the history of the people who, put all of this kind of music that we take for granted together. And this is one of the roles of Sunday Scoops.
One of the things I want to point out too is that, I mean, it is endemic in the music business now and then, but today is more an individualistic approach where producers sit down and create beats, or they hire people to create beats for them. But back in the 60s, 70s, 50s, most studios had a backing band. And
absolutely.
The backing band in Sonia Pottinger's studio at the time was Lynn Tate and the Jets, who helped to create the sound. Now, we were talking about her business acumen, how shrewd a businesswoman she is. After she separated from her husband, she still continued producing records. And I mean, they had other businesses in Kingston. There was a bicycle shop and a couple other things, but she continued producing music between 1970s up to 1985. But her biggest business act was to buy back the Treasure catalog. Right, and then she licensed it out to Trojan and Greensleeves, and I mean different companies across the globe, which was created a great income for her. Now, she also went on to produce some females, and one of the first females she produced was none other than the godmother, so to speak, of Rocksteady, which is Lady Phyllis Dillon. One Life to Live. Richie, I have such fond memories of this song because my mother used to live in Mandeville at the time, and just upstairs where she lived was a rum bar. And this was a song that was played almost on the hour, every hour. So giving the listeners a listen of
one of the things you have to remember, Garth, is that the rum bar was the poor people radio station. Because most of this music wasn't playing on the radio.
No, it wasn't. You were getting R&B.
You want to hear this music, you have to go to the rum bar.
Or a dance hall.
Absolutely. Over to you. Well, your old school one say, boy, what you call the real rum bar tune.
Well, I'm going to give them another rum bar tune now.
But the truth is, God, that was the only place we could go hear them tune during them time. Can't no come on the radio.
So here's another rum bar tune, Richie. Now, for those of you who don't know, this was Sonia Spence. And Sonia Spence was born in Mandeville, Manchester. And, she was produced in Kingston. And she was one of the few other females. I mean, she worked with also Judy Mowat and the Gay Tones. Well, I tell you, Richie, back in the day, Jamaica had no homophobia at all. Because you had the gay lads. The name of the label was Gay Feet. And now you have Gay Tones.
The Gay Tones. The point is, we lived in a different environment at the time. And so that word was, the word,
the connotation
wasn't fashioned at that time. Also.
Definitely. But the song that she produced for Judy Mowat and the Gay Tones was a song called I Shall Sing. Marcia Griffiths also did a song. That was a
massive
now,
song.
For those of you who also listening and are watching, the song Jet Plane was originally done by, I think, Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Right.
And then it was also covered by John Denver. So, those are some of the cover. That's where that song is coming from. So that is really a cover. It is not an original song.
I Shall Sing. Before you touch I Shall Sing, one of the features of the music at the time, God, we probably need to remind people. In the 1960s, 1970s, we never had the copyright issues that developed in subsequent years.
And Jamaica didn't sign the copyright law until in the 1990s.
Absolutely. And so the musicians had a certain level of latitude, a certain degree of latitude to cover other people's song. Granted, that approach to cover got one of our producers in trouble, and ultimately led to the demise of his business.
That's a litany that we do
but
every
that's a
week.
different story. Yeah, different story.
Yeah, we shall have to produce Joe Gibbs one Sunday, but we're going to need the entire 2 hours for him. That can't do an hour for him.
Absolutely.
So here is Judy Mowat and the Gay Tones with I Shall Sing.
Garth, we just want to take a couple of seconds and just big up the man on old school rules, particularly the people in the chat room, because one is a lecture going on inside there, you know, very strong interactive lecture, because everybody remember in them days now, Squeechy, one man say he used to go in a rum bar, the only way him could have go in there, him go help the man and read the Star. So
but,
him go to the bar with
well, you know, the interesting thing with rum bars too is that whereas on a radio, the only songs that were played are the ones not for airplay. Just clean songs. Now in a rum bar, you just get the one that is uncensored. So
absolutely.
When certain songs are played, if you're under a certain age, them run you out of
the bar. Absolutely.
And you remember, Richie, when rum bars and grocery shops adjoined each other.
Next door, yes.
But there was a blackboard which separated both spaces. So
and then
you couldn't just go into the rum bar. So.
You know, because you have a little domino table that go on around at the front, but the bar and the jukebox. And all of these songs were popular.
Especially on a Friday evening when everybody got paid.
Friday evening and to a lesser extent, Saturday. There you
go. One of the other songs in the 70s that she did. Oh, I also want to point out that we're featuring some singles, but Mrs. Pottinger also did albums, and she is responsible for, what would I say, busing culture.
You mean, yes, she put them on the map. In fact,
Mr. Joseph Hill.
Joseph Hill and culture, but she did, I think she did 3 albums with them. But
one of them was the International Herb.
International Herb.
One was Kumbolo.
Right.
And one of them was Harder Than the Rest.
And
she did a dub one with him too. So it's about 4 albums.
She basically put culture on the map, right? And again, one of the reasons why we think. But before we get to culture, there was another guy, Delano Stewart. Delano Stewart had a couple of tunes that were solid tunes. One was
this was early 70s.
Early 1970s when the rocksteady is transitioning into reggae. If you listen to Delano Franklin's music, you get that blend. And that was a Sonia Pottinger had this unique ear to create her own a sound that you could only identify with her. Let's give a listen to Delano.
The Delano Stewart, That's Life, is the piano solo at the very beginning.
Yeah, listen. As one man said, this was his neighbor used to repair one-arm bandit and the slot machine one-arm bandit and jukebox. So he's very, very familiar with this kind of thing. But if you're just joining us, we are just going over the career of Sonia Pottinger, and this is, of course, you're in tune with Sunday Scoops, and today we're looking at the work, the body of music that Sonia Pottinger was responsible for in terms of her record catalog. Again, this is what we do here at Sunday Scoops. Each Sunday, we take a look at the music, the people who created it, and we want to share some of those experiences with you, but in particular, we want to share the songs as well. Want to also just go back to this print that we're going to be giving away to a couple lucky listeners over the course of this week. And to qualify for this print, what we're going to ask you to do is to go to the Yard Media website and register. And you also want to provide an answer to the question. You want to name 3 of the artists that we featured on the Sonia Pottinger section of the program today. Also, you can also get a copy of this print for yourself if you purchase any 2 shirts on the website. It also gives you an opportunity to get a signed numbered print, and the print is entitled Roots, Natty Roots. Mr.
Also want to say that the print is not something that we printed off an inkjet printer. It's a professional archive ink quality printer, which will last for years when framed or dry mounted properly. So
it's good for at least 85 years.
Okay, it's archive quality, so you're getting what the museums use. It is not something that we went down to FedEx or Kinko's to print.
No,
right?
Absolutely not.
The next song we're going to feature is Everybody Needs Love, which was done in 1969 by Slim Smith, which again shows the business acumen of Sonia Pottinger. She licensed this song to Bonnie Striker Lee, but this song is coming out of her stable. Now, Richie, one of the things you mentioned at the very beginning of the program was the fact that she was a devout Christian. And not only was she a devout Christian, she produced some gospel music with
under the Glory label. No, she had a label that was dedicated
called the Glory label. It was
called the Glory label, and she recorded quite a number of what we would call Christian vocals, but we had a few that were standouts. One of them was Otis Wright.
Yes, Otis Wright and Claudel Clark, which was a young upcoming gospel singer. But the 2 Otis Wrights, I tell you, this will bring back memories. If you used to go to any kind of Sunday school, these were choruses that were sung every Sunday morning. And the first one is The Man from Galilee, Otis Wright.
Before all the tune. When I hear this tune, I remember a man by the name of Senior Daly from Classic song. When Classic a play and Senior Daly in a marquee and him drop all them tune. Senior Daly had about 5 of them tune that him line up side by side. And let me tell you, the dance turn over, man. Big dancing and the dance turn over.
What I like about these songs, though, if you grew up any church, any informal church, not Presbyterian, not Anglican, not Catholic,
Clapham church
or United Church. These were gospel halls or Church of God of Prophecy or any one of these. These songs,
hold on, man.
Clapham Church.
Clapham Church, the place name, man. Clapham Church.
But the point I'm making, Richard, is that these songs capture the very essence of what went on, the same sound that any church band play. These songs captured that in its purest form.
That was the genius of Sonia Pottinger.
Hi there. If you enjoyed that clip, go on over to our website at yardmedia.com, where you can watch the entire broadcast at your leisure. And while you're there, why don't you check out our other reggae music features? And before you leave, pick up some of our Jamaican reggae merchandise, and hey, don't forget to tell your friends.